ring if you're ready to care. Oh, let's talk power, let's talk speed. Hosted by the one and only WETOODEEP. Turn it up loud, feel the power in your seat. This is slapping meat, yes, slapping meat. From suplex dreams to championship gold, stories untold and action so bold. The match shakes fury and fire within. We're breaking it down, let the podcast begin. Oh, let's talk power, let's talk speed. Hosted by the one and only WETOODEEP. Turn it up loud, feel the power in your seat. This is slapping meat, yes, slapping meat. Takes and debates flying through the air. Turnbuckles pounding with passion and flair. Grab your earbuds, it's a front row ride. Step into the chaos where we collide. Oh, let's talk power, let's talk speed. Hosted by the one and only WETOODEEP. Turn up loud, feel the power in your seat. This is slapping meat, yes, slapping meat. Slapping meat.
What is good, everybody? It is your boy WETOODEEP, and we are back with another episode of the Slappin' Meat Wrestling Podcast. Hope you guys are ready for some wonderful wrestling conversation, because we got a packed episode for you. We have an opening thought to talk about, and then we'll move into Fantasy Book Friday. We'll move into our Deep 5. We'll go into our Friday bracket battles, and then we'll discuss the question of the week. It's a easy show, like I want Fridays to be. So let's dive on in. Our opening thought for this episode. I know last episode I said, we're not going to talk about rumors, and I'm going to stick to that, right? With the caveat being that I should have added, we'll talk about things that if it affects the product that is on TV, which is this thing we're going to talk about does, right? We're not going to sit here and talk about all the news and all the rumors that come out that say, that TNA is going to, be bought by WWE, and that WWE has right to refuse other people to buy, and the right to match offers, and they have a part of their partnership that they can buy the company at any time. We're not going to talk about that, because guess what? It doesn't affect the product on the television screen, and that's all that I actually care about pro wrestling. We're not going to sit here and talk about, all the backstage drama that every other podcast wants to talk and rant and scream at the sky about. We're not going to talk about it. The one thing we are going to talk about that everyone else seems to be talking about is the rumor that I'm not so sure is a rumor anymore. It wasn't exactly confirmed on Stephanie McMahon's podcast that was released, I think, on Wednesday. Naomi apparently is pregnant. And if that's the case, look, I'm going to be the first person to say congratulations. Right? I know there's like a response in the IWC that's weird. Like, why would you get pregnant in the middle of your push? Because, guys, there's some things more important than wrestling at times, right? I'm the biggest pro life, have as many kids advocate that you can have. Right, and congratulations, right? So let's talk about how this affects the booking. It affects the booking in that they'll probably have to strip the title off of Naomi. Now, they could go 9 months and be like, no, we're not going to strip it from her. We can go 9 months without a champion. But they're not going to do that. I think this is very obvious where they're headed with this. Right? So there's several options that you could do. You could run a tournament, crown a new champion at Clash in Paris. You could run a tournament to determine who faces Stephanie Vaquer in Paris. Whatever you want to do, right? But I think it's more obvious what they're going to do from a television perspective. On Monday, I think they strip Naomi of the title. We get more details, right? I was super confused on Monday where they said, oh, she's not medically cleared. But no other details were given. I'm wondering if they're going to run some sort of injury angle here to allow her when she can come back in a year. To come back in a year and a half, however long she wants postpartum, right? A year, 2 years when Naomi can come back, right? And what I'm not going to do is predict who the next 17 and a half champions are going to be. And we're not going to do that. What I will say is, I think the best way, and this is going to be crazy because I tend to complain when Triple H does this kind of match. But I think the best way to figure this out is, and the way that I think they're going to do it is what they've laid on screen already if we're paying attention. I think they knew about this before SummerSlam. And that is why the title picture, ever since the cash-in happened, has been convoluted with Rhea and Iyo and Stephanie Vaquer all in the mix. I think they knew this was this was a thing that could happen. Right? Now, with that being said, if they knew having Naomi remain champion is an interesting thing to do. And I know a lot of people are saying, well, they should just crown a new champion on Monday. What, for them to have the belt for 10 days and then defend it against Stephanie Vaquer to either A, lose the title after a 10-day run, which is a wasted run, whether it's Iyo, Rhea, those are really the only two competitors, right? Or for Stephanie Vaquer to lose, and you sort of you push down the momentum of one of your biggest stars on the main roster right now. So the easiest, and what I think this is Triple H's favorite way to do this, we got Rhea, we got Iyo. There's your magic formula that we've had at SummerSlam and WrestleMania. Let's just add in the third competitor. I think it's a triple threat. I think what will eventually happen is Stephanie Vaquer has her spot locked. And Adam Pearce's solution is going to be, let's just have a triple threat. Rhea Ripley, Stephanie Vaquer, Iyo Sky. I think Vaquer was going to win the match against Naomi anyway. And so the end result is still Stephanie Vaquer as champion. Right? And I think this is a very good way to do it. I'm not typically the biggest fan of just having triple threats. But I think this is the best way to do it. You then can build towards whether it's Stephanie versus Rhea, which I think is the big match they have in their bag right now. Stephanie versus Rhea, which is where I think they head towards WrestleMania. I think WrestleMania's two major matches are going to be Rhea and Stephanie and Charlotte and Jade. I think that's where we're headed come WrestleMania season. I could be wrong, but that's where I think we're headed, with Jade being champion, by the way. And so Stephanie wins at Paris. You could build a feud between her and Iyo. I'm assuming they're going to do Paris. I'm assuming they're going to skip the whatever the September PLE that's supposedly announced. We don't quite know what it is. A lot of people think it's going to be Bad Blood. I've even seen rumors that it's going to be Over the Edge. Again, we don't know, so I'm not going to talk about it. But I'm assuming that's going to be Tiffany versus Jade at that event, or Tiffany versus someone at that event. And then the next time we see it, and it really just falls down on how are we doing Crown Jewel? Because this is important. Is Crown Jewel going to be what Crown Jewel was last year, where it was champion versus champion fighting for the big gold giant Crown Jewel belt? Which I think is what they're going to do, you would think. Which would mean that it would be Tiffany or Jade, depending on who's champion at that point, versus Stephanie Vaquer. You then roll into War Games time, and maybe you defend the title there. Maybe that's a War Games feud in the making. That, who knows? They're kind of doing the same thing they did last year for women's War Games, where there wasn't a lot of attention built towards it, and I think they're going to start. They're going to have to start building that feud up to who the women's War Game is, right? And so it's an interesting dynamic that we can have here. But yeah, that's about as much as I care about this subject. Congratulations, Naomi, if you are pregnant. If it is true, congratulations. If we're going to, the thing that's interesting to me is how are we going to book this? How are they going to book this? Is this injury angle for Naomi? Or is she going to come out and say, I'm pregnant, pull the Becky Lynch and say, I'm pregnant, I'm going to vacate the belt. And then they have to come up with a way to crown a champion. That's going to be the interesting way to see how they do this. With that being said, let's drop into Fantasy Book Friday. And this one, we're going back in time. Because I said leading up to WrestleMania 40 in Philadelphia, and I said in the months after WrestleMania 40, that they were telling the wrong story. I understand Cody Rhodes' story, that he wants to be world champion. But what irritated me with how this played out was you had this 4-year-long bloodline story that anytime it started to get stale, you could sort of rejuvenate by adding new members or adding something new or doing something crazy, right? And everyone was, in some way, shape, or form, bought into the gimmick. Whether you loved it or hated it, you talked about it and you got a reaction. People were bought into this gimmick. And I said, y'all can go back and check the tapes. I said, leading up to WrestleMania 40, when Roman loses the title, whenever that happens, when Roman finally gets pinned and loses the title, that he would lose anything interesting about him. Right? Would 100% disappear. And this was if you watched Unreal, this was the same result that Triple H came to. This was the same logic that Triple H came to. Understanding if we do this, Roman is no longer the big dog. Roman, which is why when they're addressing, Seth and Punk and Roman at this year's WrestleMania, and they were addressing that, and he says, well, without Paul Heyman, he's nothing. Because without the bloodline, he's nothing. Because that's actually the story. That's the gimmick. Like, I did an entire episode breaking down the 10-plus year career of Roman Reigns and how it all fits into this one giant story as to why he was the way he was, within kayfabe. Right? And that all the character Roman Reigns wants is love from the fans, and he never got it. And so he's paranoid. He believes everyone's going to turn on him. And you see this in the Clash at the Castle match with Drew McIntyre. He doesn't have the Usos, and he's paranoid. He's not on his A game because he doesn't have his, right? He knows there are people better than him, right? And what have we've gotten with Roman Reigns for the last year and a half? Roman Reigns has been absolutely dog-walked, made to look like a little bitch. I mean, he's been the last 2 weeks, he's been beat down and had his shoes stolen from him. And that's just recently, right? So what I want to do is I want to go back in time. I want to take a look at WrestleMania 40. And I want to explain to you why I thought Roman Reigns should have defeated Cody again. Because I thought that there was a bigger story at play that would have created closure to the bloodline gimmick. Right? You ever realize how awkward the closure of that gimmick was? Right? There was no real closure in the gimmick. Right? It was very awkward how they managed to do all of that. So let's go back in time, right? So this is what happens. Roman Reigns, 1, 2, 3, beats Cody Rhodes. No Rock involvement, no, bloodline rules, none of that none of that BS that convoluted and made the build to WrestleMania too much. It's no Seth Rollins, no Dwayne, no Undertaker, no John Cena, none of that in the match, none of that, right? Roman, Cody, one-on-one, standard match. At this point, Jay and Jimmy have already turned on Roman, so you have Solo and Paul Heyman in Roman's corner. At some point in this match, it looks like Roman is going to be defeated. Until Solo steps in, maybe pulls the ref out, causing a distraction, who knows, that allows Roman to win. Up to this point, by the way, remember, Solo was sort of neglected, not cared about. Roman just saw him as an enforcer. He was also on a massive losing streak, so you could have used that into his he's frustrated, idea. And what I would have done is had Roman win the match at WrestleMania 40, and the next Monday after, Solo, they come out, they do their big celebration that he's still champion. And I have Solo turn on Roman. Samoan spike straight to the throat. Solo turns. Right? With the big payoff being, I did it for The Rock. How many times have I said during that story that needed to happen? That we needed to have the throwback to Rikishi, being that his sons are especially Solo, I think the youngest one, being the enforcer. I did it for The Rock, which now sets up SummerSlam of that year of WrestleMania 4. So last year's SummerSlam, Solo versus Roman, or you could play this out. You could play this out. You can't extend this. And that's exactly what I would do. I would extend it. Right? So Roman's champion for a whole other Mania. That brings us to Mania 41. Solo versus Roman. How you book the in-between, I don't necessarily care. Now you have tribal warfare. Now you have bloodline rules. But here's how you make it interesting. It's a cinematic match. It's on the actual island. The only people allowed on this island are family. So you got Roman, you got Jay, you got Jimmy, you got Solo. At some point during this feud, I would have Jay and Jimmy reconcile with Roman because they see the evil that Solo is. And in that year-long build towards this cinematic match, Solo then builds a crew. Tama Tonga, Tonga Loa, Tala Tonga, Jacob Fatu. And so this is Bloodline rules. Cinematic match. on the island. Roman's the elders are there watching over the tribe. Right? During this match, not seen in this entire build, the throwback to why Solo said I did this for The Rock on the day he turned, a year prior, you then get that throwback where The Rock actually shows up and pays the favor as part of Bloodline Rules, attacks Roman, helps Solo win. Solo now becomes undisputed champion and tribal chief and the head of the table. And they literally bury Roman Reigns on the island. Because I don't... to play into the gimmick, when tribal warfare happened, to change who the chief was, if you wanted to step to the chief, it was a battle to the death. So you literally bury Roman Reigns, and you never see him on WWE TV again. Because I always said when Roman lost, it should have been a finality that we never see him again. That's what makes Solo winning all the more heartbreaking. Roman never gets seen again on WWE TV. Now you could play into that story where maybe maybe he wasn't fully dead when he got buried and he comes back and he's going after The Rock. But again, all of this could be cinematic, and we'll go down to why I mentioned cinematic. We'll explain that a little bit later in our Deep 5. Right? But Solo should have been the one that dethroned Roman. It should have been someone in the family, and Solo was the best choice. Cody's title run was booty cheeks following that run. The Bloodline versus New Bloodline type OG type thing, that story didn't work. And so I'm still convinced Roman should have beaten Cody at Mania 40. Have Solo win at Mania 41. The dethroning Roman, who at this point would have been very close, within 200 days of 2,000-day reign at that point of time. Because I think he was at 13th, 16. So, yeah, well, within about 300 days of a 2,000-day reign, you then defeat Roman. You literally bury him and you never see him again. I don't know about you, but that's a type of match that I love. You then have Solo play sort of corporate champion, with Dwayne being the actual final boss, the guy in the board, and you have Solo sort of playing to that with the rest of the MFTs. You can then start a feud against Jay and Jimmy. Say you either give in to our rule or you're going to end up like Roman. Right? I think that would have been a bigger way to get closure to the story than how we actually had it end. So with that, let's go into our Deep 5. 5 things that I would do that I think would make WWE a better experience for the fans. So we'll start with the obvious one. We got to lower the prices. Whether it's to watch on TV through all the streaming apps or to more specifically in the arena. We're talking $200-$300 to go to a Monday Night Raw, thousands to go to a PLE, and selling both kidneys and a spleen to go to WrestleMania. WWE has to lower the prices to watch and enjoy the experience. That's number one, right? There's not much explaining to do. I've gone over that so many times. The second thing is make the titles feel more important, which to me means you have to have longer title runs. I know a lot of the more casual fan base are not fans of long title runs. They don't have the attention span to stay with the champion for 200, 300, 400 days. But you need to build prestige in a championship run, right? That's why Gunther's IC title run was good, and now no one really cares about the IC title now that Sammy and Jay and Braun and Dominic within the last year and a half have held the title. Gunther made it feel important. The other four never really defended it. Right? So longer, more important title runs. To allow, even though the titles, I've always said this, titles are props. They don't have any actual meaning. So you have to build meaning into the prop. Because you don't win a belt, right? You're given the belt as part of a story. So you have to give the title run and the title itself some sort of meaning. And I think you do that by establishing that you just beat the best of the best in this division. Right? Number 3. Having the weekly Raw, SmackDowns, and NXTs be less focused on in-ring wrestling and more on creating promos and vignettes and reasons to watch the PLE. This is what grinds my gears. Right? It's the what I call the indie show, the ROH, the AEW style of booking, where a 2-hour show is made up 65-70% of in-ring wrestling, and then you repeat the same, right? Vince McMahon used to do this all the time when he would repeat the same matches like 4 weeks in a row leading up to a PLE or pay-per-view at the time, right? There should be less wrestling in the ring on Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. I'm thoroughly convinced of this, that if we had a television product that was more vignette, more this is why we're going to fight at SummerSlam type drama and intrigue, then that doesn't mean you get rid of all of the wrestling, right? But the big stories need to have a purpose. It needs to be promo-driven, vignette-driven, to get me to watch the final battle or this next big event at the PLE. Number 4 is a focus on creating depth in characters and storylines. A lot of fans, again, I'm poking on the more casual side with this one. A lot of casual fans seem to assume that nuance in characters and storyline is a bad thing. Not all casual fans, but there's a big number of them that feel like we just need to have cookie cutter 1 versus cookie cutter 2, right? And you don't need, like, nuance is bad in storytelling, which it's not, right? I think creating a character where I'm a good guy, I'm a baby face, but I have a human nature, and when bad things happen, I want to respond in a way that's not so, hero-y, right? I feel like what we've done is we've made every hero in pro wrestling, every babyface, feel like he's a superhero. And there are people who do bad things that are good guys, who do bad things for a intended purpose. The guy who, needs to take care of his family, so he's going to do whatever it takes to put money on the plate, right? Or money on the table. Right? The wrestling fans are a lot smarter than a lot of content creators give them credit for. I think they can handle a little bit of nuance in their character. We don't need the I'm a devil type heel versus I'm an angel type babyface good versus evil in every story. I was talking about this with someone earlier this week about how WWE would be okay with face versus face, but they would never be okay with heel versus heel. And I think they should be. There should be no reason why we don't have matches between heel versus heel. And he said, well, the point that the reason why they do it is, who do you boo? And I said, well, let the fans decide. Let the fans decide who's the worst evil. Often, like, and as a producer, that is your job to get the story over with the fans. And so I think you could run something where you have the Lex Luthor style heel who just wants to be evil because he's jealous of the good superhero guy, right? He's jealous of Superman. And then you can have the guy that seems like a bad guy because he does bad things. But then as we get to know him more, we get to know who he is and why he's doing bad things. And we get to know, like, I think we need to have depth of characters. Because when you don't have depth, everyone seems the same. And that's the problem with a lot of indie wrestling, is that every wrestler, for the most part, especially in the men's division, every indie men's wrestler, and then really women can be included in this as well, they just seem to be carbon copies of each other. And there's no character, right? These TV shows need character and depth. And then number 5 is a focus more on the cinematic. I know what the response would be, right? And I don't... Look, when you buy a ticket, and this is why I think we need to lower prices as well, by the way, right? But when you buy a ticket to the experience known as WWE, right? You're buying a ticket to essentially the circus, right? You can't be upset that you don't see everything, right? When you go to the circus, right? Not everything that happens at the circus will happen right in front of you. We need to have more cinematic, especially cinematic vignettes and promos, like because what happens is WWE seems to only take place within a stadium, and so the world of wrestling takes place at a stadium, and so it doesn't. A lot of stories don't feel realistic because the set is wrong. If we started doing stories, like, think about Tony D'Angelo in his NXT run, right? Having vignettes in jail, having vignettes at the restaurant, having vignettes that take place outside of the performance center where all the other vignettes take place. That's why the story feels better and felt better throughout the run of the family, right? We need to have more production like that on the main roster, where Roman Reigns should have been on a boat or a yacht or on the island saying, I'm on the island of relevancy. I'm the tribal chief. I come whenever I want to, right? I feel like, so instead of having, like, the Judgment Day do these weird backstage promos where they're supposed to be in, like, a clubhouse, but it's really just a set behind the curtain, why not build them an actual studio that can be turned into the clubhouse, sort of like what you did with Bray Wyatt in the Funhouse, right? Create them like a studio outside of the arena where you can film these cinematic promos. I think they make this too hard because they want to. I really don't know the reason why. I think having more cinematic vignettes and promos and matches would create an interest and an enjoyability in the product that we don't have right now. Which then leads me to bracket battles. So we got some questionable results last week. We had really the biggest questionable result is Liv Morgan lost to Harley Cameron. And again, it's the Discord's choice. I don't hate it. I think it's questionable. I would like to know the reasoning why the votes went that way. With that being said, this week's bracket battle matchups in the first round continuing. We got Roxanne Perez versus TNA's Rosemary. We have TNA's Dani Luna versus TNA Women's Champion, as well as NXT Women's Champion, Jacy Jayne. We have Jade Cargill versus Zaya Brookside from TNA. And then we have AEW's Megan Bayne versus Iyo Sky. Voting will take place in the Discord. You will have through Monday to cast your votes. So let's talk about our question of the week. This is going to be a short episode this week, right? And so just to sort of address that, my goal with the Friday shows is just to be laid back, not to be super long. If we have a lot to talk about, we'll have a lot to talk about. But I want to be super laid back and really more short form, right? I try to aim for 40 minutes or less is what I'm trying to do with these. I don't want it to be, because the Tuesday show is so heavy with reviewing the shows, I want this show to sort of be light and airy, and we can just sit back and have a good time, right? So let's talk about the question of the week, and then we'll go home. Question of the week this week was, you can only watch one wrestler's matches for the rest of your life. Who is it? And my answer is the Ring General, Gunther. And here's why. I have not once seen a bad match by Gunther in the years that he's been in WWE. I've never watched his indie stuff, have no real intention to watch his indie stuff. But since he's been signed to WWE, whether it's NXT UK, NXT, or the main roster, I have never seen a bad match out of Gunther. Which tells me a lot. Tells me a lot. So yeah, Gunther is the guy that I will watch. I've seen some answers in the Discord be Austin. I saw, a tie between, I think it was Mankind and shit, I forgot what B Master's answer was. Off the top of my head, I know he said he had a tie between Mankind and Rey Mysterio. There it is. I don't know if Wavy D's trolling. He said MJF. I don't think MJF's all that good of a wrestler. That's just me. James, being the AEW mark, put Takeshita. It is what it is. I don't find him entertaining or interesting, but right. But Austin is a common answer. I've seen people answer this question with like Brett or Angle. All good answers, right? This is very subjective. Gunther is my choice. And with that being said, we're going to end this one under the 40-minute mark. And I'm going to just end it by saying thank you for listening. If you're watching the YouTube version, like, comment, subscribe, comment in the the comments the answer to the question. If you had one Superstars match, who would it be? Go join the Discord page. It's where all the conversation happens. And I'll just end it by saying again, I appreciate everyone who listens. A review would be nice if you're listening to the audio version. And I appreciate every single one of you. But until the next time, on Tuesday, I'm WETOODEEP. This has been another episode of the Slap and Mead Wrestling Podcast.
So hit that subscribe, come along for the ride. AEW, WE, we're always on side. From fantasy booking to baddies that slay. Slap and Mead Wrestling every Tuesday.